Happy Pride Month and welcome to my shelf of yaoi-brained and yuri-pilled delights! So, you may or may not know me as that one brain-rotten weirdo who made like an hour's worth of analysis on the theoretical, very plausible romantic connection between two psychological horror RPG boys, but did you also know that I live to collect gay manga? Recently, I've moved to a new place with someone who loves weeby content as much as I do, and we've merged our manga collections together as a result. Coincidentally, that's also the reason why I have just been super quiet on this YouTube channel. That and my recent art school graduation, but I am a free, graduated bitch, and I have come back with a desire to make a lot of new content for y'all. So, hi, welcome, and welcome back if you have come from those aforementioned theoretical analysis videos. Today's offering is quite special. Up until now, I've focused on ships that I enjoy, but I've never focused on overt queer love stories that I enjoy. I mean, I guess you could count my brief video about Maho Ako, given that that is a Yuri series, but that video was more about the merit of its incredibly problematic existence, instead of the quality of its romantic subplots and actual Yuri ships. But this video isn't about Maho Ako. It's about another anime that caught my eye in the winter 2024 season. Releasing episodes just a day after one of the most hilariously degenerate Yuri I've seen in my entire life was a gay love story that continued to touch my heart more and more as the relationship between the main leads developed. But because it's me and I can't ever stand to be normal about the things that pique my interest or scratch very emotional itches, I, after watching the anime, binged what I could of the manga, bought as many volumes as I could afford at the time to put on my shelf, then watched the JDrama, then rewatched the anime so I could compare it simultaneously with the JDrama, and now, as of filming this video, I am making my way through the Chinese radio drama. I'm normal, you guys. I'm so normal. I'm the most normal. Before making these silly little brain rot videos, I absolutely was that one annoying ass friend who would literally try to insert their favorite thing into every possible conversation that they could. But now I make these dumb little surface level analysis videos on YouTube that get attention for some reason. I can write my thoughts, express them to you guys, and there will be no escape. None at all. It's not like you can click off this video or anything, but please don't. But anyway, that's not the point. I think it's about time that we talk about how an anime with a title so wild as Cherry Magic, 30 Years of Virginity Can Make You a Wizard? Genuinely touched my heart. 1. What is Cherry Magic? Cherry Magic, 30 Years of Virginity Can Make You a Wizard? Yes, that is the legitimate God-given title, and I love it, is originally a manga series written and illustrated by Toyota Yu that began releasing at the tail end of 2018. It follows the story of, you guessed it, a virgin man named Adachi Kiyoshi gaining contact-activated telepathy powers on his 30th birthday. Essentially, God smiled down on this man and said, "Get out there, my boy. Be social. Touch grass." It's through this power that he comes to find out a male coworker, Kurosawa Yuichi, has a big, fat crush on him, and thus, hijinks ensue. The manga itself is still ongoing as we speak. Its 14th volume actually came out in Japan on April 22nd, 2024. Over the years, Cherry Magic, as I will shorten it to now, has gained a Japanese drama CD, a J-drama adaptation with a tie-in film, a Thai drama, a Chinese radio drama, and most recently, an anime adaptation. For the sake of scope, I'll mainly be focusing on the original manga, the anime adaptation, and the J-drama adaptation of the story, but wow, that's a lot of versions of the same plotline and characters, huh? It becomes evident through the vastness of adaptations that there's something truly special about the story being told here. So, if you were to ask me, a recently christened cherry magic enjoyer, what that something was, I would say it's the surprisingly grounded way the wild premise of man gaining contact telepathy powers because he's a virgin is handled. Cherry magic uses its main hook as a way to invoke self-reflection and growth upon the characters and the viewer. It explores every avenue of what it would be like to read the minds of people you come in contact with earnestly. The mind reading is not just a vessel for comedy, it's there to serve a purpose of telling a story about self-improvement, growth, and love. In order to examine that further, let's take a look at cherry magic's two main leads. 2. Adachi and Kurosawa. With any romance out there, the story lives or dies by its main leads and the chemistry between them. Cherry Magic's Adachi Kiyoshi and Kurosawa Yuichi have that chemistry and then some. On a surface level, the ship dynamic is very easy to read. It's common dweeby everyman x beautiful popular man. It's emo nerd x preppy jock. It's moon and sun boys. It's classic, almost overplayed when it comes to tropes. But because Cherry Magic has just that much more heart than it ever needed to, it's the details that push their dynamic beyond simple tropes. Let's start off with Adachi, since he's the one with the titular cherry magic. In every version of the story, Adachi Kiyoshi is an earnest salaryman whose single greatest flaw is his tendency to slip into the background and never draw attention to himself. His inability to speak up causes the people around him to take advantage of his diligent, soft-spoken demeanor. Because of this, he's never had any main emotional connections aside from his family and his one friend from college, Suke. This puts him in direct contrast with Kurosawa Yuichi, the other half of this romantic pairing, the Kuro in Kuro Ada. Kurosawa is the ace of the sales department at the company he and Adachi work at, which is called Toyokawa, by the way. He's handsome, sociable, put together, and all around a great guy. He's as close to perfect as anyone can get, and Adachi initially resents him for this, thinking he's just some hot normie whose only asset is his pretty privilege. Hello, gargoyle! My kitty is on my lap. When Adachi finds out that someone like the Kurosawa Yuichi is in love with him, it throws him for a complete loop. He initially doubts the legitimacy of his magic powers because he's bewildered that Kurosawa could be so enamored with a man like Adachi. And I'm enamored with you, barbed wire. He's gonna distract me so much from reading the script, but look at him. Look at him. As it becomes more and more clear that this isn't a delusion and Kurosawa is indeed hopelessly in love with Adachi, Adachi begins a journey of self-reflection and growth. It's through Kurosawa's lovesick thoughts that Adachi begins to realize that his presence in this world truly matters, and that he deserves to take up space and exist confidently and earnestly. On top of that, Adachi learns to not give in to the negative assumptions he has about the people in his life. Before finding out Kurosawa was in love with him, Adachi thinks bitterly of him. He's frustrated that there are people in this world who can seemingly breeze through life just because they're popular and beautiful. But Adachi soon finds that Kurosawa isn't living as perfect a life as he assumes he is. Kurosawa Yuichi is a dreamer. He's a hopeless romantic, and he's very vulnerable emotionally, but he never lets it show. He knows that people see him as simply a pretty face, and thus he doesn't allow others to look past his veneer of perfectionism and put-togetherness. He knows that if he expresses his feelings, he'll be scolded for complaining despite having so much going on for him, or that people would take advantage of his big heart. And thus, he never lets it show, feeling content in playing the role of the perfect man and watching and admiring Adachi from afar. But seemingly out of nowhere, Adachi becomes a larger part of Kurosawa's life. Kurosawa finds that he can no longer keep his emotions bottled away, and I don't just mean his romantic feelings for Adachi. So essentially, it's through getting closer to each other that Adachi and Kurosawa begin to change and grow as people. It's a little messy, and not everything goes as hoped, but that's life. Now, some of you might stop me and be like, Nerdy, that's still pretty common and tropey. Gloomy guy with self-esteem issues and pretty man with perfectionism are things you find in ship and fic all the time. And to that I say, tropes gotta come from somewhere, bestie.
Character archetypes, dynamics, and prompts all come from the desire to take very real human experiences and simplify them for the sake of telling a cohesive story. There's a reason why there's this growing trend on social media where writers try to sell their books based on the tropes they fulfill as if they're tags on AO3, and I don't really think that's a bad thing. These elements are genuine hooks that get people interested in what the story has to offer. What I find separates a good romance story from a great one, however, is the ability to make these cliche moments that do actually happen in real life feel human and tangible. Let's take a close look at a moment I feel really makes Adachi and Kurosawa's dynamic feel special. Let's look at the moment when Kurosawa first fell in love with Adachi. Yeah, let's take a look. Let's take a look. No, please, that's attached to my ear.
In the manga and anime, this moment takes place a year before Adachi gains his magic powers. But funnily enough, in the JDrama adaptation, they change it so that it happens 7 years prior to the story's beginning when the two were hired at their job. Either way, the scene plays out pretty similarly across nearly every adaptation. Adachi and Kurosawa get invited to dinner and drinks with the president of a partner company. The reason the two of them were invited to this important dinner is pretty clear. The president has a thing for younger men. Cougar alert, although we fucking hate her, and I'll get into that later. Kurosawa is shown constantly engaging in conversation with her, trying to prove that he's more than just a pretty face as he mentions her most recent products and her business accolades. But unfortunately, this is completely glossed over as the president only desires to seduce him. Meanwhile, Adachi, being someone who struggles in social settings, tries his best to fade into the background, but keeps getting chastised by this company president for not drinking or engaging in conversation. It's in a feat of desperation to keep the president happy and prove himself as a good salesman that Kurosawa ends up drinking all of Adachi's alcohol for him, getting incredibly drunk. In this moment, Kurosawa is clearly feeling drowned by all the expectations people have of him and the assumptions they make because of his looks. What I also get here is somewhat of a frustration towards Adachi, who isn't trying as hard to be a people pleaser, although this frustration is hardly malicious and more a result of the stress Kurosawa is feeling. In a very obvious moment of sexual coercion, the president tries to isolate Kurosawa so she can take advantage of his people-pleasing nature. But it's in that moment that Kurosawa's drinking gets the better of him and he gags. At least, that's the manga and anime version. In the J-drama, he sort of jumps away from her, which to me doesn't feel as weighty and scandalous as him gagging in front of this woman who's trying to seduce him, but I digress. This completely halts the dinner, and the veteran Toyokawa staff do their best to smooth things over with this other company president. While cleaning himself off, Kurosawa and Adachi, who is about to leave the scene, overhear their superiors talk badly of Kurosawa. He's supposed to be the honeypot. He's supposed to allow himself to get taken advantage of for the sake of their company. Why isn't he just accepting the fact that he's nothing more than his appearance? It's here where the viewer comes to realize that Kurosawa and Adachi are struggling with very similar self-image issues. They're simply dealing with them in very different ways. Both of them struggle with the fact that people see them in very specific and surface-level ways that undermine the work they put in to be good people. But while Adachi doesn't do anything to combat these assumptions and internalizes people's views of him being a mundane and boring person, Kurosawa is constantly fighting an uphill battle to prove himself as being worthy of the privileges in his life. Unfortunately, people have dismissed his attempts of genuine hard work and discipline enough times that he feels completely at his limit, resolving to let himself be the person people think he is, a salesman whose only asset is his pretty face. But before he can internalize this, Adachi seeks him out, not wanting to abandon his drunk colleague outside in the dead of the night. What follows is a brief conversation that Kurosawa would never forget.
俺なんか顔要員なのに社長を怒らせてほんと役立たずだわただの同僚相手に何を言ってんだろ。
そんなことないよ。いつも営業先のことすごいリサーチして製品のことも全部覚えてきて、今日だってお酒俺が飲めないから代わりに飲んでくれて。
なんだよ。
いや、黒沢っていつも完璧ってイメージだからさ。弱ってるとこ見るの、新鮮だなって。
In that moment, Kurosawa felt seen and heard. He felt like all of his efforts to prove himself were finally acknowledged and valued. And when Kurosawa allowed himself to be vulnerable out in the open for possibly the very first time, Adachi let him. It's a quiet and beautiful moment, and it really shows the chemistry between these two characters. And of course, Kurosawa develops his crush right then and there. Now that we're back in the present and the story continues to develop further, we see more clearly the potential in these two relationships, and it makes you root for them to get together even harder than before. And guys, seriously, I can't stress this enough, the banter between these two characters is what really sells it for me. It's slightly different across each adaptation of the story, but it always has this underlying level of playfulness and ease. Adachi tends to play the not-so-straight man to Kurosawa's delusions and overflowing emotions, but he also never chastises Kurosawa for being such a weird guy, finding it cute and playfully digging on him from time to time. It's so fun seeing these two 30-year-old men kick it back and have fun with each other. It ends up defying that notion that the fun in your life has to stop once you reach adulthood. People are always out here saying shit like, ugh, you're 30? That's so old. When it really isn't. In the grand scheme of things, your life has only just started and you've recently gained the adult freedom to go out and make your own memories. The fact that this story involves working adult characters being able to find solid balance in their lives is another thing that makes this story extremely valuable to me.
3. Life outside school. Over the years, I've noticed the slow rise of anime and manga surrounding adult queer characters being licensed for translation, and that fucking rocks. I remember when I first started collecting localized Yuri manga, finding stories that had central characters over the age of 16 was like hitting the jackpot. It's wonderful now that I can just pick up different Yuri series depending on how my tastes suit them, rather than just grabbing everything and settling for scraps. There are simply more options out there to suit different palates and tastes, which is awesome because contrary to popular belief, queer people are not a monolith and we have a lot of different tastes when it comes to the queer media we love to consume. Personally, if I'm looking for queer stories to put on these shelves right here, the stories have to have a bit of an extra hook if they center around characters that are younger than a certain age. It really just needs to have a little something something to draw me in. It's why another 2024 anime with a manga series that I tried really hard to read and enjoy called Whisper Me a Love Song never really caught my eye. I just feel like it focused a little too hard on high school culture for my taste, and even though the band hook was pretty interesting, I've been a Bandori stan for many years. I need a little something other than queer vibes, because we all know Bandori has plenty of queer vibes to fill a queer ship full of queer people. Ahoy. Can you tell that wasn't on my script? In contrast, my literal favorite anime ever, Review Starlight, is actually about high school age characters, but it never lingers on this high school aspect of the setting for too long. It focuses on the cool stuff, which is the underground gay singing and dancing fight club. And then with Maho Ako, the anime I was watching alongside Cherry Magic, even though the characters were school age, I feel like it did fit its theme of sexual awakening, and even then, it never lingered too long on staples of anime high school culture that I have just found more and more stale as I've continued to consume series like this. So when I heard the premise of Cherry Magic through a Mother's Basement recommendation video of all things, it instantly piqued my interest, and I am so glad that I sought it out. There's something about seeing classic, almost cliche romance tropes being played out by 30-year-old salaryman that just make my heart flutter a little bit. It makes Cherry Magic just feel that much more fresh and nuanced. Adachi is in this post-quarter life crisis state of numbness where he feels like his life has gone absolutely nowhere for the past couple of years. There's nothing going on for him in his life that feels remotely interesting or noteworthy. And then he gets these magic powers. And then he realizes that his objectively gorgeous, objectively super popular colleague is super in love with him. Suddenly, literally out of nowhere, it feels like a switch has flipped, and his life is now very eventful. Because of these two new developments in his life, Adachi begins to take an active role in engaging with the world around him. There's a really sweet moment where Adachi is out for dinner with his college friend and fellow virgin mind reader Tsuge, where Adachi is just going on and on about a recent staff trip experience. He enthusiastically talks about the thugs who tried to jump him and another coworker, and then how Kurosawa came in seemingly out of nowhere to protect them and deal with the situation. Tsuge then points out that Adachi has never told him any stories about his previous staff trips, because previously, Adachi never went out of his way to experiencing anything worth talking about. Thanks to this power he gained, new experiences don't scare Adachi anymore. He realizes that he has the opportunity to go out there and make new connections, almost like his life has only just begun now. In a world where there's so much focus on how youth is fleeting and aging sucks, seeing Adachi beginning an eventful life in his 30s makes me, an early 20-something, feel more at ease with the fact that I don't have everything figured out. As someone who has barely entered the adult world, seeing stories about fully grown adults finding ways to still harbor excitement and joy and love in their lives makes me forget that literally everyone loves to talk about how aging fucking sucks, and that being young is better, and that high school are the best years of your life. They're fucking not. It's just... it is frustrating, truly. And this sentiment about how life is not your youth is shared with the younger characters in this story. There is a really notable mini-arc / subplot surrounding Adachi's colleague Rokaku and Tsuge's love interest Minato, where both of them feel like they have completely failed adulthood already, despite barely being 23 years old. Rokaku abandoned his passion for dance to seek out a career in the corporate world, while Minato continues to try and seek a career in dance to little to no success thus far. Minato absolutely resents Rokaku for making what he thinks is the smarter choice and seeking out a stable job, but rubbing it in by not engaging with their college dance group anymore. But truthfully, Rokaku misses dancing and the fun times he had with this friend group. He thinks now that as a working adult, he's not allowed to experience that kind of freedom and fun anymore. In the end, the older characters are able to assure both of them in respective one-on-ones that the decisions they both made regarding their careers doesn't mean they're no longer allowed to be friends or have fun together. It's such a painfully simple revelation, something that should basically be common sense. But when you're a young adult, seeking work and stability is such a massive stressor that you don't realize that work-life balance is one of the most important things you have to maintain in your adult life unless you want to fucking die. And man, I really needed to hear that one. I hope now you're starting to see how much Cherry Magic fucking owns, and you're interested in seeking it out for yourself. But then you remember that there's so many adaptations and versions of the story, and you don't know where to start. So if you're curious as to which version you should start with, let me try to lay out some of the strengths and weaknesses of its most popular adaptations for you.
4. A brief tangent. The Many Adaptations.
The main issue across Cherry Magic adaptations is that there really isn't a perfectly solid standalone version of this story. Unfortunate, I know, but hopefully comparing and contrasting the three arguably most widely known versions of Cherry Magic might give you an idea of which one you should start with. Those are, of course, the original manga, the anime, and the JDrama. The original manga's biggest strength is that it's still ongoing. It's really great to see a romance story not come to a close because the main couple has reached a specific relationship milestone. So many times, love stories simply end with the characters getting together. We then don't get to see the trials and tribulations of a long-term committed relationship and how it affects the characters that we spent this whole story rooting for. So watching Adachi and Kurosawa face and then overcome different relationship hurdles and still keep going is extremely refreshing. What sets the manga back, however, is its pacing. The manga loves doing this thing near the beginning where it inserts a bunch of 0.5 chapters retroactively that actually include a lot of really important establishing character details that flesh out the story and make it special. In turn, many Cherry Magic adaptations tend to fix this by streamlining the main plot and not constantly going back and forth. However, Toyota Yu has improved a lot in her storytelling as the manga has progressed, and later volumes don't have the same pacing issues as the start of the story. So a lot of the manga's problems are simply growing pains of a story that ended up becoming much, much more than the artist had initially planned for. The anime, as I mentioned before, is what got me into Cherry Magic, and its most detrimental flaw is how fucking ugly it can be at times. It does, however, do a great job at streamlining the manga story up until the end of Volume 7, but then it completely rushes over key character moments in Volume 8 and 9 so it can rush to 10 so it can reach a solid enough conclusion in its 12-episode run. I find that the anime and manga paired together is a really good viewing experience. If you end up reaching out towards the manga after finishing the anime becomes a really good introduction to the story that has absolutely stellar voice work. Chiaki Kobayashi's portrayal of Adachi is a standout in my opinion. Fucking his screams. Bro, so good. It also has an ending theme that bops and jams in every way possible. If you can tolerate jank, this adaptation is pretty damn solid. The JDrama is simultaneously the most different and arguably most popular adaptation that I'll be talking about, and there's a couple reasons why that's the case. It began airing in 2020, barely 2 years after the manga started, so while the first half of the JDrama is a really slow and solid adaptation of the first 3 volumes, it ends up having to do its own thing with the last 5 episodes to the unfortunate detriment of the story, in my opinion. However, the things it does well, it does absolutely well. Machida Keita's performance as Kurosawa is fucking top notch. This man does an incredible job bringing the character to life. He simply is Kurosawa. Look at that fucking smile. That is a Kurosawa smile. I swear to fuck. Anyways. Unfortunately, I can't say the same for Asako Eiji's more clumsy boy performance as Adachi. Of course, this is my opinion, and you may prefer his performance over the original portrayal, but I simply love snarky Adachi way too much. There's a loss of edge in Asako's performance that gets me coming back to the anime and manga a lot more often than the J-drama. Regardless, the chemistry between these actors is great, and they still do a wonderful job selling this relationship dynamic. Because it takes its time fleshing out the first stretch of the manga's story, the J-drama ends up putting a lot more love into its supporting cast. A big shout out goes to the handling of Fujisaki's character, because even though I love the sillier role she has in the manga and anime, Fujisaki in the J-drama feels a lot like an actual fleshed out character. The J-drama is definitely worth giving a look, as its strengths and flaws really balance each other out to create a pretty solid viewing experience. Now, if you want to hear my own personal recommendation, just watch all 3, and then whichever extras you want to consume. I promise they're all relatively short, despite one being ongoing, but man, I can't stress enough how much each version of this story has its ups and downs that make them very unique standalone viewing experiences. It's like you're consuming officially licensed fanfiction of a ship you really enjoy, only to realize that there's a fan community on top of all of these awesome canon versions out there. There's so much food out there, guys. So much good food. So go out there, consume your fave version of cherry magic, and eat well. But we're also not done with this video yet. I still have a few more things I want to say about the story and its themes, so if you'll stick with me a little bit longer, let me indulge some more. Please don't click off this video. I promise I have important things to say.
5.
If you can't love yourself, how in the hell you gonna love somebody else?
Up until now, I've wanted to include as little spoilers as possible, just so that anyone who's watching this video that is interested in cherry magic can pick an adaptation and experience the joy of watching these two characters fall in love for the very first time. But I also want to get into these stories' messages and how they impacted me. In order to do that, I will have to spoil some major plot and character developments, so if you're someone whose viewing experience relies on being as unspoiled as possible, I recommend clicking off this video or skipping to the next timestamp to watch the conclusion, and then going out and getting your fill of the post-quarter life crisis telepathy yaoi. I promise it's worth it, it's so good, I wouldn't be here if it wasn't. Go out and watch it, my bestie. But if you're someone who does not give a shit about spoilers, or if you're a fellow cherry magic fan and you just want your opinions on this series validated, hello! Let's talk about the mind-reading magic and how wonderfully it's handled in this story. I find it really compelling that Adachi never uses his powers to manipulate or take advantage of the people in his life. I feel like it would be so easy to write a story that goes in that direction, but cherry magic never does. Instead, Adachi actually finds his powers to be incredibly emotionally and mentally taxing. He wishes he was never such a loser that he had ended up with these powers to begin with. There's actually pretty straightforward and almost cliche symbolism in the anime opening, visualizing his shift in perspective when he reads Kurosawa's mind for the very first time. In the opening, we see people eroding away into birds that attack and swarm Adachi, clouding him with their negative and mundane thoughts. But then Kurosawa's thoughts emerge from his heart as a golden bird that immediately casts the storm away, and the two of them begin to seek each other out. It's through these positive thoughts reaching into Adachi's heart that he's able to gain the confidence to make connections with others. Adachi then understands why he was granted this power to begin with. Throughout the story, Adachi learns that he may have been making toxic assumptions about the people around him in order to protect himself from the pain that comes from being in relationships with people, both romantic and platonic relationships. However, it's when he finds out about Kurosawa's crush and the many nuances of his personality that he learns to pick up on the nuances within other people's emotions, even without reading their minds. Throughout Cherry Magic, the mind reading becomes a vessel for Adachi to empathize with others and pin down why people do the things that they do. He often feels really guilty about the fact that he can peek in on people's innermost feelings without them knowing. But when he's accidentally clued in on these people's true desires, he takes time to validate their feelings, to sit down with them and tell them what they need to hear. And this extends beyond his budding relationship with Kurosawa. While Kurosawa's feelings are the catalyst of this story, it's through engaging with these feelings and acknowledging them that Adachi is able to reach out and begin making friends with other people in his life. It's then through these connections with other characters like Rokaku, Fujisaki, and Tsuge that Adachi is able to conclude that his feelings for Kurosawa are different in nature, that they're romantic. I've mentioned this earlier, but Adachi's connections with the supporting cast are something the J-drama really excels in. It never isolates Adachi with Kurosawa for too long, and while the anime and manga have scenes of Adachi connecting with the people around him, the J-drama's slower pacing at the beginning gives it the opportunity to add even more scenes of Adachi learning to be a good friend and coming to terms with his feelings for Kurosawa. Adachi's arc doesn't even end when he reciprocates Kurosawa's feelings for him, because that's just not how relationships work. Now that Kurosawa is his boyfriend, Adachi has to deal with the issue of the power imbalance that comes from him being able to read Kurosawa's mind without him knowing. This is unfortunately where the J-drama starts deviating, because these story developments started happening after it went into production. So the anime and manga are the original artist's intent of the story, and I feel like the scene of Adachi revealing his powers to Kurosawa is in turn handled a lot better. It's this really quiet and private scene where Adachi concludes that in order to maintain a healthy relationship with his boyfriend, he'll have to tell Kurosawa about his magic power, or Kurosawa will keep feeling left behind, thrown for a loop, and absolutely baffled that Adachi knows things about him that Kurosawa never shared. So Adachi tells Kurosawa the truth, fearing the worst, and while Kurosawa is initially baffled and extremely embarrassed, he accepts Adachi and they share their first kiss. Trust me when I tell you this is like peak 10 out of 10, almost fucking 14 out of 10 couples first kiss in a romance anime. It's so cute and it's so quiet and it's so sweet and intimate. I love it so much. It's so fucking peak. Unfortunately, Kurosawa simply knowing about Adachi's mind-reading abilities doesn't fully solve the issue in their power dynamic. Adachi ends up struggling a lot with handling the use of his power. He notices that he's starting to use his abilities as a crutch to simply make choices for other people without seeking them out and communicating with them. Because he can hear their true thoughts, he doesn't need to have a conversation about it. He can just bend to their whims and make the choices they want. He gets into this pseudo fight with Kurosawa over this. In this specific situation, Kurosawa is frustrated that Adachi is declining a large business opportunity far away without consulting him. Kurosawa stresses that even though he'd be upset with having to be in a long-distance relationship with him, he also wants his boyfriend to seize the opportunities he's been given. Kurosawa simply wants Adachi to have a conversation with him when he's not. It's here where the one-sided nature of his power is starting to put a wrench in the relationship it helped cultivate. While reflecting on the fight and considering this business offer, Adachi comes to the realization that he's at the point where his powers are no longer the push he needs in order to make connections, but a crutch he's using to people please. He's starting to fall into the same trap Kurosawa did before he fell for Adachi, but instead of using his good looks to charm people, Adachi is reading their innermost thoughts and using them to tell people what they want to hear at the detriment of his quality of life. But just like how being with Adachi made Kurosawa realize that he doesn't have to be a perfect people pleaser all the time, being with Kurosawa helped Adachi understand the importance of healthy communication and connection. That's when Adachi decides to take the initiative on his own, and it results with the two of them having sex for the very first time. There's a really great conversation following their first time that makes my heart go absolutely insane. It's the morning after, and Adachi is baffled that he lost his powers. He racks his brain over what could have caused his ability to go away, unsure if it had to do with the fact that he had sex or if it was something else. When Kurosawa sits at Adachi's side and earnestly asks if he regrets sleeping with him, Adachi's firm no is what helps him figure out why he lost his mind-reading power. Adachi concludes that it wasn't having sex that made him lose his mind-reading power. It's the fact that he was finally at a point in his relationship with Kurosawa where he felt like he didn't need to read his mind in order to touch his heart. And for Adachi, that sentiment was shown through having sex with Kurosawa. And hello, that is the sweetest, most heartwarming, oh my god, it's so sweet. We love communication. We love the promotion of healthy communication in BL and queer stories and whatever. It's so great. My fucking heart is soaring. It's great. I love it. It's awesome. It's the best. I simply adore that this story uses the hook of mind reading to lay out such a beautiful message about love. Seeing Adachi become a better person through accepting the love of others is just man, it truly is what makes Cherry Magic so special. I literally can't stress enough how happy the themes of this story make me feel. Love and relationships of all kinds are such an important part of the human experience, but in order to find that love, we have to accept the fact that we are worthy of it in the first place. And more likely than not, you are worthy of that love. So go out there, find that love for yourself. I know it's out there somewhere. That's so fucking corny. I can't believe this fucking gay-ass telepathy yaoi is making me so sappy, but it's so good. It's so good.
6. Conclusion.
It's crazy that a yaoi called Cherry Magic, 30 Years of Virginity Can Make You a Wizard, has such a beautiful story about love of all kinds. But at the same time, I'm a bitch who loves absolutely whack shit like Theater Girl Fight Club and BDSM Magical Girl shenanigans, so I shouldn't be that surprised. I love going into stories that sound absolutely fucking whack, because I feel like the wildest of story premises end up finding ways to insert down-to-earth themes that end up connecting with a part of my soul. And I'm not lying when I say that Cherry Magic is one of the most down-to-earth queer love stories that I've ever consumed. I may not be as experienced with yaoi, but my Yuri collection is indeed vast, and I can only really point out Bloom Into You and How Do We Relationship as contemporaries when it comes to grounded storylines about queer people connecting with each other and forming positive relationships. Seriously, if you've made it to this point in the video and haven't gotten to watching, reading, or just consuming Cherry Magic yet, you're doing yourself a massive disservice. Go indulge in Pride Month by brainrotting over the telepathy yaoi, bestie. It's fun as hell, and I would know that given how long this video has become. I genuinely did not expect it to get this long, which is insane because I barely even acknowledged the secondary romance between Tsuge and Minato. Wild! If you're someone who happens to enjoy supporting queer people and enjoyed this video, links to my social media, commission page, and online store are down below in the description as always. I'm selling this cute little Cherry Magic print too. Look at them! They're so silly! Regardless, I'm just a humble lesbian who's trying their best to make a living through gay fan art and brain rot, so any support would help, even if it's just a comment on this video. I do read all the comments, so rest assured your thoughts will be acknowledged. But anyway, thank you so much for watching. Happy Pride Month, and I'll see you in the next video, whatever the hell that may be. Bye!